A single unexpected touch changed everything between us, and from that moment, nothing felt normal again. It all started on what should have been a regular doctor's appointment. Just a boring checkup. I was sitting in the waiting room, scrolling through my phone like always, completely unaware that everything in my life was about to shift. The place was quiet except for the low buzz of the ceiling lights and the soft rustling of magazines. Still, I felt tense, like something strange was in the air. Then the nurse called my name. I stood up, forced a small smile, and followed her down the hallway. That strong, sterile smell hit me immediately, that sharp scent of hospitals that always makes you feel a little off. I kept telling myself, it's just a routine visit, no big deal, but my nerves didn't agree. Inside the room, the doctor was waiting. He looked to be in his 30s, tall and composed, with neatly styled dark hair. He had a calm, professional energy that should have made me feel safe, but something felt different. He smiled politely, but there was something in his eyes I couldn't quite figure out. A strange feeling came over me, like this wasn't going to be as ordinary as I thought. "So, what brings you in today?" he asked while flipping through my file. I muttered something vague about not feeling well lately. The truth is, I didn't really know why I came in. Maybe it was just stress. Maybe I needed some kind of escape. Whatever it was, I felt like I wasn't in control. "All right," he said, not missing a beat. "Let's run a quick exam. Please undress down to your underwear." His voice stayed neutral, but my stomach flipped. I nodded and stood up, hands clumsy as I fumbled with my shirt. My heart thudded in my chest. I kept reminding myself this was normal, just another exam for him. Still, I felt strangely exposed. I sat back down, barely able to look at him. He turned away, pretending to focus on the equipment on the counter. But I could feel the weight of his gaze earlier, something unspoken passed between us, and I wasn't imagining it. He checked my vitals, tapped my knees, listened to my heart. All routine. But the air was heavy with something we didn't say out loud. And just when I thought we were done, he said quietly, "I need to check one more thing. Could you stand up again?" His voice was calm, but something in it made my pulse quicken. I stood, unsure of what was happening, barely able to breathe. Then he stepped closer, too close, and adjusted the waistband of my underwear. His touch lingered just a second too long. Time slowed. I wanted to pull away, crack a joke, say something to break the tension. But I couldn't move. My mind kept shouting that this was just part of the exam, but my body disagreed. Everything inside me felt electric. He looked at me, really looked, and I felt my cheeks flush. My heart pounded. It wasn't just me. There was something real there, even if neither of us spoke a word. Then, like nothing happened, he took a step back and cleared his throat. "That's all for today," he said, acting casual, almost too casual. But I saw it, in his eyes, in the way he avoided mine. He felt it too. I got dressed quickly, my hands shaking. He turned his back, pretending to organize notes, but the energy in the room had shifted. Something had happened. Something we didn't have words for. I grabbed my bag and walked out, my mind spinning. Was it all in my head? Had I misread everything? But deep down, I knew I hadn't. The way he looked at me, the way his fingers brushed against me, it wasn't just in my imagination. Something changed that day. And I had a feeling that moment was just the beginning. The days that followed were strange. I couldn't stop thinking about that appointment. Every time I closed my eyes, I was back there, his touch, his eyes, the silence between us. It haunted me, made my heart race for no reason. I tried convincing myself it was nothing. Doctors see people all the time. It had to be in my head. But I couldn't forget it. The feeling was too real, too intense. And then, out of nowhere, I got a call. "Hello?" I answered, confused by the unknown number. "Hi, this is Dr. Hughes." His voice hit me like a jolt. I froze. "Oh. Hi," I said, trying to sound normal even as my stomach flipped. "Is something wrong?" There was a pause. "No, nothing like that. I just wanted to follow up. You mentioned feeling off last time. I wanted to check how you're doing now." I hesitated. "Why now? Why this call?" "I guess I'm fine," I replied, unsure what to say. But even as the words left my mouth, I knew this wasn't just a check-in. He said, "That's good to hear," but that same quiet tension from the clinic crept into his voice again. And I realized, this wasn't over. There was a certain tension in his voice, the kind that hinted at more than what was being said. "I was thinking," he began, his words slow and careful, "maybe it might help to talk outside the office sometime. Just casually." My stomach turned. Was he really suggesting what I thought? Or was I just reading too much into it again? Still, I couldn't ignore the way he said it. There was a softness there, a suggestion that went beyond professional concern. "Outside the office?" I echoed, my voice slightly higher than I intended. "Yeah," he replied quickly, almost too quickly. Nothing formal, just, maybe over coffee. I hesitated, my heart skipping a beat. Was this okay? It felt like it was stepping into gray territory. Doctors don't just invite patients out for coffee. And yet, something about it made me feel alive. Sure, that might be helpful, I said, before I could think too hard. Great, he said, his tone suddenly lighter. I could almost hear him smiling. How about tomorrow? There's a small place off Elm Street. Quiet, not too crowded. Around 3? I agreed, then hung up the call, my chest tight with nerves. What was I getting into? This wasn't just a friendly chat. And deep down, I already knew that. But I couldn't stop myself. I didn't want to. The next day, I showed up early, my mind racing and my fingers tapping anxiously on the table. I kept looking toward the door, half expecting him not to show. But he did, right on time. He walked in looking just like I remembered, calm, collected, almost too composed. But there was a softness in his smile now, and when his eyes met mine, they stayed there a little longer than they should have. Hey, he said, sitting across from me. He was trying to keep it casual, but there was something in his tone that gave him away. Hey, I said back, my smile just as shaky. We talked about everyday things at first, work, hobbies, small talk, pretending like this was a normal coffee meetup. But it wasn't. We both knew that. And soon, the conversation shifted. So, about the last visit, he said, his voice lowering. I've been thinking about it. A lot. And I know I crossed a line. I didn't mean to, but I haven't been able to stop thinking about it since. The words landed like a weight between us. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to tell him it was okay, that it wasn't a big deal, but that would have been a lie. Because I had been thinking about it too. I don't know what to say, I finally whispered. He ran a hand through his hair, looking more human than ever. I know it's wrong. I know we're not supposed to feel this way. But, do you feel it too? My chest tightened. Maybe, I said, barely loud enough to hear. He held my gaze for a long moment. Then slowly, carefully, he reached across the table and touched my hand. It was a small gesture, just the brush of fingers, but it felt like lightning. I didn't pull away. I let the touch stay, let the silence settle over us as the world outside faded into the background. For that moment, it felt like we were the only two people in existence. I shouldn't be doing this, he said quietly, pain flickering in his eyes. I'm your doctor. This is wrong. I shook my head, the words coming from somewhere deep inside. But it doesn't feel wrong. He looked at me, conflict written all over his face. His fingers curled slightly around mine, a silent admission of everything he couldn't say. I know, he said. That's what scares me. We sat like that for what felt like forever. The silence was heavy, the kind that came with unspoken truths and choices we hadn't made yet. This wasn't just some innocent connection, it had the power to tear things apart. Eventually, he pulled his hand back, leaning away with a sigh. We have to be careful, he said, serious now. If anyone finds out. I know, I interrupted. But I can't pretend this didn't happen. He nodded slowly. Neither can I. And just like that, we both understood what we were stepping into. It was complicated, messy, and possibly dangerous, but neither of us wanted to stop. Not yet. After that day, things didn't go back to normal. We didn't talk for nearly a week. It was like we both needed space to make sense of what had happened. But the silence didn't help. It only made the thoughts louder. No matter how much time passed, I couldn't shake it, the way he looked at me, the way his touch made me feel. And I knew in my heart, this wasn't over. It was only the beginning. I had just finished work when my phone buzzed. Seeing his name light up the screen made my heart skip a beat. The message was short, I need to see you. No explanation. No context. Just those words, and somehow, that was enough. I could tell something had shifted. I stared at the screen, heart racing, before I typed a quick reply, where? His response came right away, my place. Tonight. I knew what this meant. This wasn't just playful anymore. This was real. This was crossing into something we couldn't undo. My mind screamed at me to stay away, to be smart, but my body had already made the decision. Before I knew it, I was standing outside his apartment building, staring up at the windows, wondering what was waiting for me inside. When he opened the door, there were no polite greetings, no awkward smiles. The tension that had been growing between us for weeks snapped into place the second our eyes met. His apartment was dimly lit, shadows dancing softly across the walls. It felt like the world outside had disappeared, leaving only the two of us in that small, quiet space. He didn't say a word at first, just stepped aside to let me in. I could feel his gaze on me as I walked past him, my heart beat so loud it felt like it echoed through the room. When the door closed behind me, the silence grew heavier, like we both knew what we were stepping into. I wasn't sure you'd come, he said at last, his voice rough, low. I wasn't either, I admitted, breathless. But I'm here. He nodded, taking a step toward me. The distance between us shrank, and I could feel the pull, that magnetic, overwhelming pull. We stood still, just looking at each other, like we were waiting for some invisible permission. Then he reached out, his fingers brushing lightly against my arm. A small touch, but it lit a fire inside me. Suddenly we were standing just inches apart, the air thick with everything we hadn't said out loud. I've been thinking about you, he whispered. Me too, I said, my voice barely holding steady. Then, without another word, he leaned in, his lips brushing softly against mine in a kiss so gentle, it felt like a question. The world seemed to pause around us. That first kiss was slow, hesitant, like we were both afraid to push too far, but it didn't stay that way. The tension, the longing, the emotion, it all exploded. His hands moved to cradle my face as the kiss deepened, and I melted into him completely. It wasn't just about passion. It was about everything we hadn't let ourselves feel until now. Soon, his arms wrapped around me, pulling me closer, and I could feel the heat between us growing. I didn't even realize we had made our way to the couch until we were tangled together, legs touching, breaths shallow. His hand moved to the back of my neck, fingers gently brushing through my hair. Every kiss, every whisper, sent chills down my spine. The intensity of it all wrapped around me like a wave, pulling me in deeper with each moment. We pulled apart for just a second, both of us breathless. His eyes met mine, full of longing, confusion, and something deeper. Something real. I can't stop, he said, his voice rough with emotion. And I don't want to. Neither do I answered, my voice shaky but certain. That was all it took. He kissed me again, this time with more need, more urgency. Every wall that had once stood between us had crumbled. The feelings we'd both tried to push down had burst free, and we didn't hold back. His touch was everywhere, firm, warm, familiar and new all at once. I let myself get lost in it, in him, in this moment we'd both been secretly craving. Everything else faded away. Nothing mattered except what was happening right here, right now. He finally broke the kiss, his breathing heavy. His hand still held me close, like he couldn't let go. This is a mess, he muttered, almost to himself. I know, I whispered. But maybe it doesn't have to be. He looked at me, really looked, and for a second, something in him softened, like he believed that maybe we could figure this out. But then, as if pulled by a force he couldn't resist, he leaned in and kissed me again, and in that moment, nothing else mattered. He kissed me again, this time with more purpose, more intensity. Like he had finally made up his mind that no matter how messy this was, he wasn't going to hold back anymore. And neither was I. Our bodies moved with urgency, almost like we were afraid the moment might slip away if we didn't give in completely. Every ounce of tension from the past few weeks, all the glances and touches we had tried to pretend meant nothing, came crashing down on us. There was no going back. Time felt like it disappeared. We stayed wrapped up in each other, every kiss and every touch unraveling all the things we had both tried to deny. It was overwhelming, in the best way. It felt right, like this was where we were meant to be all along. Eventually, we pulled apart, breathing hard, eyes wide. Reality started to seep back in. This changes everything, he said, quietly, almost like he was saying it to himself. Yeah, I whispered. It does. We sat in silence, letting it all sink in. The weight of what we had just done. The fact that nothing would be the same after this. Whatever came next, it wouldn't be simple. But in that moment, none of that mattered. What mattered was that we were no longer pretending. After that night, everything felt different. The energy between us had shifted completely. We couldn't pretend anymore. And honestly, I didn't want to. But the questions came anyway. Doubts, fears, those nagging thoughts that crept in during the quiet. We had crossed a line. A line we couldn't uncross, and that reality started to follow us like a shadow. In the days that followed, we talked more. Messages came more often, more quickly. Every time I saw his name light up my screen, my heart jumped. I couldn't wait to see him again. But underneath all the excitement was this lingering unease, something neither of us wanted to acknowledge. We didn't talk about the future. We didn't define what this was. Maybe we were afraid of what we'd have to admit if we did. Then, one evening, he asked me to come over again. But it didn't feel like the last time, not rushed, not urgent. It felt uncertain. Like he had something on his mind. Something heavy. I didn't ask. Maybe I was scared of what he might say. When I arrived, he greeted me with that familiar smile, but I could see it, the distance behind his eyes. We sat on the same couch, the one where it all started, but this time, the silence felt louder. We talked about everything except what we needed to. Work. Life. Anything to avoid the real conversation. Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore. What are we doing? I asked, the words spilling out, breaking the stillness in the room. He didn't answer at first. Just stared at his hands, nervously fidgeting with his fingers like he was trying to find the right words. I don't know, he said finally. I've been asking myself the same thing. There it was, the truth we had both avoided. Hearing it out loud made my heart race. It's not what I expected, he admitted, looking up at me. I didn't plan for any of this. But now that it's happened, I don't know how to deal with it. I don't even know what this is supposed to be. His honesty hit me hard. I had been so caught up in the feelings, the connection, the spark, that I hadn't let myself think about what it all meant. Was this just a moment that got out of hand? Or was it something more? I don't know either, I replied softly. We both went quiet again, the weight of reality pressing down on us. This wasn't just about two people who found something unexpected. There were real consequences now. Complications. We were standing on the edge of something fragile, something that could change both our lives. I've been thinking, he said after a long pause, his voice quieter than before, about what all of this could mean. For you, for me, for everything. His words made my chest tighten. I had always known this wouldn't be easy. But now it was becoming painfully real. His doubts mirrored mine, and that scared me more than I was ready to admit. I don't want to hurt you, he continued, his voice full of emotion. His eyes were searching mine, full of concern and something else I couldn't quite name. Whatever it was, it made my heart race. I don't want to make this harder than it already is, he said quietly. But I also can't pretend I don't feel something. There was a kind of vulnerability in his voice that I hadn't expected. I thought he might be distant, maybe even regretful. But instead, he was being honest, raw in a way that caught me off guard. I didn't know what to say. This isn't easy, I finally murmured. We both know that. He let out a long breath and leaned back against the couch, his face torn. No, it's not. And I keep telling myself that it's too messy, too complicated, but even then, I can't let go. Not when it feels like this. His words echoed in my head, stirring up feelings I had tried so hard to keep buried. I had been bracing myself for silence, for distance. I never expected him to open up like this, and now, with everything out in the open, we couldn't pretend anymore. We sat there, both of us caught in that strange space between knowing how deep our connection ran, and having no idea where it would lead. I looked at him, really looked, and in the way his expression softened when our eyes met, I knew, we had already crossed a line we couldn't uncross. Then he broke the quiet again. I don't want to rush this, he said gently. I don't want us to do anything we'll regret. I just want to see where this goes. It wasn't a grand plan. It wasn't a solution. But it was honest. And somehow, it felt like enough. Okay, I whispered, finally letting go of the breath I didn't know I'd been holding. We'll take it slow. His smile returned, real this time, warm and relieved. And with that smile, the tension that had been sitting in my chest for days began to ease. Nothing had been resolved. We still didn't have the answers. But for the first time in a while, it didn't feel so heavy. Because we weren't facing this alone. We were figuring it out together, whatever this was. As the night went on, we talked about everything and nothing at all. Work. Memories. The small, ordinary pieces of life that suddenly felt comforting. The pressure of the past few weeks seemed to fade into the background, replaced by something quieter, something safe. We didn't have it all figured out. But we didn't need to. For now, just being there, in that moment, was enough. And for the first time, that really felt okay.